All right. Well, welcome, Method to the Madness. Thank you so much for your time today. We're really excited for you to be featured during Black History Month here on Rarity Rock Radio as one of the only women of color performers in the Tucson area.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Misty and I are happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
You're welcome. Well, we'll go ahead and get started with the first question. So please go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us about the band and where you're located.
My name is Stells, Rossi, and I am lead singer and female guitar shredder for Method to the Madness. The band I started 25 years ago as an homage to my grandfather, who was actually the guitarist for a famous band from the 50s called the Cleftones. And I play mostly in Arizona, even though I've toured to California, Guatemala, and Latin America, as well as internationally. But home is Tucson.
Great. Yes, please keep going.
And I'm Misty. Live here in the Tucson area. I'm a bass player for Method to the Madness.
She's Arizona born and bred, by the way.
I've lived in
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just two creative women that decided to address something. I carried on my grandfather's work, which is something that I don't think a lot of society is aware of because it's just not been discussed. There is kind of a sundown music industry. You don't really see breakthrough artists ending musical segregation. There's always the battle of the sexes that's been going on for eons, but one would think that since the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King, all of these cultural landmark advances, why you don't see people considering that what they've been seeing their entire lives is segregated music and art.
Thank you for sharing that. Can you share about the history of the band and its evolution?
Yeah, sure. So the band actually was formed in Guatemala, Central America. That's where it was born. And like I said, I'm a legacy musician. There's a lot of famous names in my family related to Gladys Knight from Gladys Knight and the Pips, Dr. Dre, who's a famous rapper. The family tends to stay in that musical segregation, and my grandfather was a rocker at heart. And one of the things that I did when I picked up the guitar was I switched from symphonic violin to rock and roll. And I wondered, all of my uncles would go R&B, they would go funk, but nobody ever crossed that invisible line. And I was just told my whole youth that it's just not something you do. It's not something our kind did. You don't see it. You don't sing country. You don't sing rock. And I began to be a rebel, a young punk from the 924 Gilman up in Berkeley, and just said, why? And my inner teenage angst questioned that. It was the 90s. I'm a zennial. I'm part Generation X, part, at the cusp of the beginning of millennial. So we were the indigo kids that began to provoke the question of what box, not inside the box, not outside the box. So I picked up a guitar and decided to do in Latin America what was also unheard of, a plus-size woman of color playing grunge rock. So I was the first to break the stigma there and got the title of Reina Rockera, played Lake Atitlan International Music Festival, got to headline for bands like I got to meet Brian Howe from Bad Company and some other bigger names, and I actually headlined them and toured 10 years down there. And then I came up to Arizona circa 2009, where it's a bit of a different atmosphere. Arizona Madness started out in the open mics, as any musician does. That is like the meet and greet for musicians. You got to pay your dues. You got to get to know your city. You got to get to know your players and who's who in the hierarchy and the gatekeepers and stuff. No matter where I've played in the world, no matter where I've toured, same structure. New town, new people, right? We faced a lot of adversity coming up out of the open mics, not just as female musicians, which there's that stigma, but having a woman of color front the band was not as received as my male white counterparts or, female cover band white counterparts. it's so rare that there's only 6 acknowledged on planet Earth as actual female rockers. None of them are alternative rock at all. And my goal is to be the 7th and to represent Tucson, Arizona. And we've actually achieved global airplay, and that is what we remark.
That's awesome. That is so cool. As we've talked a little bit about already, February is Black History Month, and you've talked about some of your family influences with music and carrying on your ancestral legacy. Can you tell us a bit more about your musical influences and inspirations?
Yeah. The cool thing that I think is coming out with Black culture and all of this crazy shenanigans that has happened is there's been a lot of people speaking up. My influences come from multicultural Black background. So in America, you have what they call African American, which they associate pigmentally as Black people and Black culture. But what's misconstrued is that Black culture is not limited to African American. My family is African European. So having Egyptian and Sicilian descent, it is an entirely different culture, in Afro-European culture. So what you'll hear in my music is a reflection of that international family. I have family in Brazil. I have family in Egypt. I have family in Greece. I have a lot of family in Italy and Sicily, in France. I have family in the Bayou. So you're going to hear different musical meshing because of that multiculturalism in my genetics. It comes out in my songwriting, which is a little bit different than what you would hear your standard Americanized major tunings, or like the way that the song structure is. You'll hear elements of funk, you'll hear elements of Motown, you'll hear elements of reggaeton, you'll hear elements of Latin salsa, you'll hear minor Arab chords and solos, which is not something that a lot of people have an ear for if you're a traditionalist or a folk artist or a country artist. So it's all about sampling a new spice of life and auditory sound.
So interesting. Thank you for sharing. Question for you both. Can you tell us about your favorite current artists and musicians and biggest influences right now?
Misty?
As far as bass players go, Victor Wooten's pretty cool.
Victor Wooten's a genius.
Yeah, he's awesome, and his techniques and stuff are very interesting and different in the way he comes up with things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Amo.
Yeah,
Amo Chip Dabney. He's a local bassist and sax player that is a genius.
Yeah.
This guy's a Grammy nominee, and he's a local Black musician from Tucson that plays with the band Almosphere. They're epic. They're epic.
Awesome. Now, about your music that you play, we've heard a little bit about your multicultural influences as it relates, from the intersection of identity and all the different genres that you transcend. Tell us about what you're working on lately and a little bit more about your music.
My music is kind of like the soundtrack to life as I see it and experience it. Like, the world is my muse. So, I may go and write a song after this conversation today. You never know. But I promise it won't be a Taylor Swift kind of song because you guys are cool. But songwriter, beware of songwriters. We will immortalize everything. Music is literally what feelings sound like. So when I wrote the Asylum, it was during a very, very complex time in my life where I got diagnosed immunocompromised to black mold exposure from a slumlord. And I got medically quarantined to the house for close to, 2-year period. And I couldn't eat anything. And I kind of had to go through this purge of this purification process of being locked in my room away from everyone. COVID, hit the whole planet. So it seemed like the whole world was grounded. Music was shut down. Luckily, Misty moved down from Globe to kind of get closer and help, and she moved next door to me, so it was like she had the pod next door, and we were able to work on these things while everyone was isolated and shut down, and you had the Black Lives Matter movement happening. We had racial tension towards both Misty and I during all of that stuff right here in Tucson. We had threats and attacks and insults, and it got really, really scary. And the isolation, the insanity, the political craze of just watching communities divide. So it was kind of like the whole planet turned into a nut hut. So we wrote this album called The Asylum. It is everything that I felt and saw during that period that happened, not just internally with me, but externally with my community, with my friends, with my loved ones, with everyone that I knew in my family. That we had over 23 deaths from COVID in my immediate family worldwide, with Italy and Egypt and America, and we were just watching people drop like flies. And all of this kind of psychological turmoil came, art was my outlet. So I picked up my pen and I wrote songs about it.
Where can our listeners find you online?
We are actually everywhere. We are on every streaming service worldwide. You can find us on Spotify, Amazon, Deezer, Tidal, iTunes, YouTube. We're actually distributed out of the UK worldwide. We have our own official YouTube channel. We have music videos out now. We're on ReverbNation, which gives tour dates. It's been, crazy. We do a lot of stuff. I think Music Network One is going to be doing some small mini shows, and we're going to keep people posted with that. We'd like to get some of the local Tucson bands in on that to kind of like, if we get in, we're going to open the window for the home team.
Right. That would be amazing. And I trust that Method to the Madness will find a way and pave the way for the rest of the local artists here in town.
I think we just need to have an epic concert. I really do. We have all this desert space. Like, we should just
a lot of talented artists.
Get some people and get the Keno Sports Complex and make it happen this summer. We really just need to do it. If Bisbee can do this in the Gulch, Tucson can do this.
That's awesome.
Well, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate what you're doing, and anything that you want to shout out at the end here to the listener.
Thank you guys for listening and keeping music alive, in a digital era. I appreciate anybody who listens to radio and podcasts. Thank you for being unique, and I hope you guys have a blessed life. And remember to please don't judge a book by its cover. It is Black History Month. Yeah, culture is not pigment. Art is not pigment.
Music and art is supposed to move the soul.
It's supposed to move you, and it's supposed to make you feel. It's not supposed to divide us. It's supposed to show us how alike we are.
Wonderful words. Well, we're big fans of Method to the Madness, and we look forward to continuing to play your music on rotation on Rarity Rock Radio.
Send us some more updates as soon as you have them. Good luck to you.
We will. Thank you guys for having us, and we love you, Tucson.